Hello, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to another Clownversation. Today, I'm with Ezra LeBank, who is Director of Movement at the State University of California in Long Beach, and also one of the co-editors of a fantastic book, Clowns in Conversation. I'll be talking to him in just a moment, so don't go away.
It's just a conversation with a fellow clown. It's not very serious, we're clowning around. It's really just a clownversation.
All right, welcome everybody. If you're new to the Clown Spirit family, you're so welcome. It's lovely to have you here. Please hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel. Support our mission of getting clowns out into the world. And in case you don't know me, my name is Barnaby King. I'm founder of Clown Spirit, where we take the power of clown and we use it to bring lightness, joy, and connection to your life and the lives of everybody around you. So please support us in our mission of bringing clowns to the whole world by sharing, liking this video, hitting the subscribe button. And also, if you feel moved to support us, please check out our Patreon site. That is very easy to find, patreon.com/clownspirit. There it is. Now, before I bring Ezra on, I also just want to let you know about a very cool thing coming up. If you haven't heard about the Clown X Masterclasses yet, then you need to check it out, because this is a really amazing program that we have going. It's now been running for 6 months. We have monthly masterclasses with amazing clown teachers, all online. We've had Jeff Johnson, Shannon Calcutt, Joe Diefenbacher, Avner Eisenberg, Moshe Cohen, Robin Hambrook. Those are the 6 we've had. And coming up next month, we have Olivier Hugues Terreau, who specializes, here he is, he specializes in working with people living with dementia. He's been working in hospitals for a very long time. Olivier Hugues is a really remarkable person. If you haven't come across him, met him, or taken anything with him, I really strongly recommend this masterclass. Olivier Hugues was co-founder of Dr. Clown Foundation in Canada. He's also nominated as an Ashoka Fellow of the International Network of Social Entrepreneurs for helping people living with dementia. And he is a very inspirational individual, and he will be teaching this upcoming Clown X Masterclass on Saturday, May 6th. And it's called The Empathetic Point of No Return. It's going to be very awesome. And the cool thing about Clown X is that if you sign up for a particular month, you not only come to that month's masterclass, but for the time that you're signed up, you actually get access to recordings of all the past masterclasses. So say you join up today, you could see any of those 6 masterclasses that we've had with those amazing clowns over the last 6 months. So it's a pretty cool deal. And the most amazing part is that you get to participate live in Olivier's workshop on the 6th of May. So my guest this week is someone who has, I think, spoken to more clowns than I have. And that's saying something, because over the last year and a half, I've done a lot of these Clownversations. Ezra LeBank, together with David Bridell, about not 8 years ago, published a book of interviews with some of the most amazing clowns around the world. And it's a really fantastic book. And today, we're going to get to talk to Ezra about some of the stories and the experiences that he had talking to those people. But beyond that, Ezra is a very respected, recognized practitioner in his own right. He is head of movement and professor of theater arts at California State University, Long Beach. Also, movement director and founder of Bossy Flyer, which is an independent theater company. I mentioned that he co-edited the book Clowns in Conversation. He's a global leader in theatrical movement education. As I said, highly recognized and acknowledged throughout the world. And so it is my great pleasure to welcome onto the Clownversation stage, Mr. Ezra LeBank. Hi, Ezra. Welcome. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for coming on.
My pleasure. That whoever you just described sounds much more impressive. No, it's great. It's really fun. It's fun to think about how long ago, because yeah, it was like 10 years ago we went to Routledge with this idea that we would do this book thing, and it's like, oh yeah, it's been a minute.
Right. So the book was published 8 years ago, but you must have started the process a long time before that.
Yeah, yeah. I think I went to David. So I had this idea because I've been teaching clown for 15 years as a professor, and and about 10 years ago, I had this idea that it would be so cool if my students knew the people who I know and love and am inspired by, and that it wasn't just somehow this like imaginary link that like I knew these people and maybe they would experience them because we were doing this like osmosis thing, but that what if I captured conversations that we have together about our work and about what that's like, and I was terrified to do it by myself, so I went to David, who is a close friend in the Los Angeles area where we are, and said, hey, let's, you want to do this thing? And he was like, it's brilliant. And so we spent a good year going back and forth on a Los Angeles representation. That'll probably be on for a moment before. Oh, that was quick. On cue for LA. Anyway, spent about a year going back and forth with Routledge. They finally gave us a green light, and then spent a year traveling around talking with clowns all over, and then in 2018 came out. Yeah.
Now, I really want to ask you about, how you actually got introduced to all these clowns, like what was the way in, because that's relevant for me as well. But before I do that, I just want to say to folks watching that please jump into the chat. I didn't mention that before. I usually kind of do a big encouragement at the beginning, but please jump into the chat. I mean, just say hi. Just let us know where you are today and what's on your mind. Say hello and be part of this Clownversation community. And if you have any questions or comments based on what Ezra is saying or something you're curious about, please just throw it into the chat and we'll weave that into the conversation so that it's not just the two of us talking heads here indulging our personal interests, which is
good.
Which is fine. But it'd be lovely to have everyone involved. Yeah. So Ezra, since we're talking about the process of the book already, I want to just kind of continue on that because, so I've been, talking to all these clowns. I've done about 65 now, I think. And part of the trick is how do you, partly it's like finding the balance of not just the super famous clowns, but also the kind of like the up and coming ones, the ones who are doing really interesting work, but aren't necessarily well known yet. And it's quite easy to get hold of them and they will say yes. But then there's this kind of upper strata, right, of clowns, like Philippe Gurlier and David Shiner and Bill Irwin, I don't know, Larry Pisoni, these people, Slava, right? Slava's in your book. Like, I'm sure each is a sort of separate story of how you managed to access that person and then have them say yes. But are there any general, I don't know, ways in that you found that were effective, or was it like you really got to work for each guest, each interviewee?
How to be a clown whisperer?
Right.
Well, yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, basically, David and I started with a dream list of here's how we envision the thing. And I will say, for what it's worth, I mean, we have friendships with a number of amazing clowns in a variety of rights, but we decided very specifically to focus on clowns who had significant circus, mostly circus career, performing in circus, or in some instances, it was more significant theater performance and sort of straddling the balance of that. But we decided to use that in order to narrow it down because there's so many incredible people. And we had thought initially we might pursue more clown teachers, clown doctors, and wanted to chat with people like Patch Adams. And then we're like, no, we need to get very clear. And then that kind of narrowed the way for our selection. And then we started by posing as serious journalists with with a connection to a major international publication.
Great.
I mean, no, it's quite, having the contract with Routledge was very helpful to be able to tell people this is a book with Routledge, because a lot of people are like, who the fuck is this guy? What's going on? We had a lot of conversations with agents and managers who did not, have a lot of interest in chatting with us, but we pulled whatever strings we could. I'm a professor at a, major university, and this is an academic book with a major, I mean, we use the word major a lot. And then it was really a game of friends, and who do you know, who do I know, who can get to this person around the back door so that we can actually chat with them. And it was quite involved. Some people were very easy to get in touch with and very welcoming. Some people are a bit more guarded around their time or access. And so we relied on, begging friends to beg them that they would just do this one thing and it would be fine. Who felt
like the biggest catch? Like, whoa, they said yes.
I mean, I don't think I can answer that question because many of them are living and one of them might watch this. There were, everyone had their own story. I mean, I will say, I'll tell you one story, which was a story that was a bit fraught at first and then became really delightful. So I traveled to Versio, South Switzerland, to talk to Dimitri, who passed a short while after the book was published. So I feel somehow, I don't know, there's something special about that moment because I feel really lucky to have caught him while he was, there and able to have a really sweet conversation together. But so I had never been able to speak to Dimitri. I talked to his agent, got through to his manager. His manager was very protective. Dimitri was 80 years old at the time, quite revered in Switzerland, quite busy, and really focusing on just being with his family, doing certain things, running his theater, performing this show once a week, and was not easy to get to. And his manager said, "Okay, we can book you in to watch his show, and then you can have a conversation with him." And I thought it was all going to go great until I got to Versio. The evening of the show, I'm confirming my tickets, and the manager says, I think actually what we'll do is he's going to have like a bite after the show. You can just run by and chat with him for a minute then. And I was like, no, you don't understand. I need his undivided attention for 2 hours. This is that's not what this is. And it seemed for a minute like it was all slipping away, and I had traveled to Switzerland and was just going to come up empty-handed. And I sort of begged this manager that I really needed to meet him the next day. Could he please make sure it fit as I thought it was going to? Went through a whole thing. Finally, he said, who knows who he was talking to? He said, okay. And so the next, I saw the show. It was wonderful. The next morning, I went back to the theater. And I was expecting, some kind of really, like, there would be some barrier on things, or I don't know, it'd be like, you're on the clock. And just Dimitri was there, and he was the kindest man I've ever met in my life. I mean, he was 80 or 81 years old at the time, and just felt like, the father or grandfather figure I would dream of having. I mean, such a, all, with love to my own father and grandma, but he was just the warmest, kindest person, and we had a really sweet conversation, and it couldn't have been more open and relaxed. Like there was, we had the whole day, we walked around the theater grounds and chatted together, and it was just like so gracious. I had no idea that it would be that kind of a thing after I had like been on nails to get there. So, a number of strangenesses that happened along the way, but we'll work on the movie of the writing of the book later.
What was it like talking to Slava? That seems like that would be kind of slightly intimidating to me.
Slava was, I mean, I think that certainly Slava is a big figure. He's so kind. Now, we had a translator to speak with him. because he speaks a little bit of English, but not enough to really express himself fully. So we wanted a number of clowns. We wanted to have a translator, even if they could speak some English, to make sure. So there you go. You have to work with a translator, and that'll get you into some interviews. But he was just such that one we didn't get to do in person. We weren't able to arrange it. We wanted to go to his chateau, but we did that as at that time it was a Skype conversation. That's what we could arrange with him, and with a translator who we were able to bring in on our end. And it was a little bit intimidating to begin, but then very quickly, I think the thing about clowns in general is there's something friendly, there's something very easy and welcoming about these types of people. And so even if we began with a little bit of, we'd better, be on our game to make sure that this goes well, after a little while, it was quite, it just had a sweetness that it was, what's the word? Not off-putting, but like
disarming.
That's the word. It was disarming, and then we just had a nice time.
Beautiful. I'm quite good friends with Peter Schub, and he's been helping me a lot to connect, because he knows all the people, but he refuses point blank to do one himself. He's very I'm not going to do it. But I think it's very different coming on and doing video live conversation than sitting down for a chat, for a book interview.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've got this wonderful format. We dreamed that we would be thoughtful enough to capture something like this, but you're way ahead of us in terms of, technology. We looking back on it, I think we were kind of silly to not have been more technologically thoughtful, or like found somebody, because we talked about the audio record and how great it would be if we'd, a really good, we have recordings, but they're terrible. They're on an iPhone audio recordings. You wouldn't publish those, and the idea that we would have video, but, we wouldn't be able to hire, in our minds, it was going to be like a crew, or at least a person who would come and do that. We certainly didn't have the expertise. Now, just, after the last few years of everyone kind of getting a ring light and learning how to use video conferencing, it seems like we're able to do this so much more intelligently. And it is a bit of a shame to feel like we lost the moments, that we could share them as videos or a podcast or something, but they're just writing, and that's what they'll be.
I just wanted to share for folks watching this, a little snapshot of the book itself.
And that's Leela Monti, if people don't know.
Yeah, Leela, who I did a Clownversation with. I think she was like one of the very first ones I did, actually, a couple of years ago. And such a lovely picture.
Yeah, Leela is a gem.
This is the second edition, which had a lot more interviews in it. So did you do those, a whole new set of interviews after the first edition came out, or had you done them all already?
No, we did it after the first edition had come out. It was a lot to get the first edition in, but in the process of writing it, not the process of writing, in the process of doing the interviews, everyone we spoke to, this is really the answer to the question, which I'm sure you experienced as well. Everyone you talk to says, "Oh my God, but you must have talked to so-and-so." And we're like, no, we don't even know who they are. Like, how did we miss that? Because we'd spoken to a number of friends around the world who are experts, and we thought, certainly they're going to know anyone who's anyone in, Europe or whatever, but it just goes on and on. Everyone knows someone else who's really a genius in their own right. And so I felt like
when I started this, I would get to about 50, and then that would probably exhaust about all the, really significant clowns. And now we're on 65 or something. And I just feel like I have a longer list than ever.
Yeah.
And that I'm booked out for months now, like through June. And I'm going to take a break in the summer, and I've got a whole list of people for September already. So it's like exponential. It's great.
Yeah, after the end of this chat, I'll give you another list and get you into 2024.
That would be really great. You know, there's some people here who are really on my wish list, and not just my wish list, but people who've, you know, people who regularly listen to Clownversations have expressed the desire to have on. I'm working very hard for Leo Bassi. I'm in touch with Joanna, his brother, his sister, and she's she's doing her best. I think we'll be able to get Leo. We had Shannon, we had Angela, we had, you know, Avno. We've had quite a few of these.
Yeah, I saw looking over that, you know, looking at all your past conversations, I was like, oh my God, these are all my friends and all the people that I spoke to.
Yeah.
And all these things. It's
it would be wonderful to have Jeff, you know, Jeff Hoyle, Bill Irwin, David Shiner, Larry Pisoni. These folks would be amazing, but they're not really, like, some of these folks are on Facebook and they're pretty easy to get hold of, but some of them not so much. So
yeah, some of them are very reticent to come out and do things. Yeah, it's definitely, and I can see how for a number of them being on this kind of a setting might be a bit more of a stretch for them than being able to just get them to chat for a few minutes. And it's like, I'm just going to write about this. I'll send you the copy.
Yeah,
you know, it's a bit more maybe low key to ask that, even though it goes in a book and so on. But
have you heard of Cristina Moreira? Yeah, so I'm hopefully going to have her on. She was actually the teacher. She's Argentinian clown, for people who don't know. She was actually the teacher of Lila Monti and
Chris Marti. She's in the book.
Yeah, Chris Marti.
Yeah.
Cristina Moreira was the teacher of those two.
Oh, yeah. Oh, exactly. Yes.
So she's kind of 70-ish and sort of like a very senior, you know, part of that tradition. So I'm excited about that. I spoke to Michelle Matlock, who is amazing. Absolutely love Michelle.
And near you.
Yeah. And she's doing a very cool project at the moment called the Mammy Project. I don't know if you've heard anything about that. She just got a big funding grant for that.
Yeah, I mean, because she's in Tacoma, but teaches sometimes in Blue Lake. She flies over you.
That's right, she does. So Ezra, that's a good segue into talking a bit more about. Oh, I'm going to get rid of this because otherwise we'll be watching. We'll be looking at that for the rest of the conversation. That would be funny. Okay, so I'd really love to talk about you now. Can we do that?
Sure.
Because we've been talking about all these other amazing people. You have been teaching in universities for a really long time. How did you get into that? Now, and what was the journey? Were you always clown? Because now you sort of bridge that kind of gap between movement and clown. Was that always the case, or did movement come first, or clown come first when you were sort of starting out?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it started with movement work. I feel like Felix Ivanov, who passed just recently, who was the teacher at Purchase, where I went to school, and at Juilliard for a long time, and then at Syracuse for a number of years until he passed last May, almost just a year ago. And he was a movement and combat teacher my first year at Purchase, and meeting him just felt so natural, and it threw me into everything in terms of biomechanics and partner acrobatics, and I got really excited about that work. And he was so gracious. He invited me into a number of other spaces he worked in the city in New York, and I think that it started to open up music and clown and other, you know, related forms to that. And so the work, all, you know, those different pieces, for me, movement, acrobatics, dance, clown, it all felt of a world. It didn't feel so much like separate pieces. And so that was what got me really excited. And then from there, everything began to be sort of round together. And when I discovered clown more. And actually, David Bridell, who I wrote the book with, was one of my early teachers. He taught us. He wasn't full on, but he did like a guest section at Purchase for, I don't know, a month or two. Probably someone got a gig and had to leave, and they didn't tell us that, but they just said, look, you get David Bridell for some period of time. And he was such a sweet presence that it presented clown in a way that was really charming and welcoming. And so that got me quite interested. And so I started piecing these things all together. And then my journey from there was, I didn't know that you could be a movement professor and that would be like a thing you could, actually do as your primary work. And when I found that out, I feel silly that I didn't know, because I had teachers, but for some reason it never occurred to me that someone could get that job. But when I realized it, and that it wasn't just, something you did once in a while, but it could be your profession, I thought, okay, I'd better go and just do all of this that I can. And so I went to study commedia with Antonio Fava in North Italy.
Yeah.
And that was really transformational, both Antonio, but also just the like international network of people who were there, who were all really amazing and got me connected to so many different places. And I had chances, to scrape together something to go to Poland and study with a company there, or something in New York. And I would just get everything I could everywhere. And I followed, I slept on my friend's couch and followed Felix around New York City for a year. As my kind of, unofficial graduate movement training, because his English wasn't very good. He needed help to translate certain things. And so I would assist the movement stuff, and I would just help give better English interpretations of what was happening. And it really brought me into the whole universe. And then as I went on and on, I think clown became more kind of more present in my heart, and the generosity of spirit of the way that I understand like where clown is for me was so human and so necessary that it really became a central piece of what I do in my performance and teaching, and teaching clown since 15 years ago now has just become almost ritually the most just kind of celebratory time I have with my students, because we laugh from such a deep place together, and we express something so vulnerable that it transcends everything else in terms of the kind of bonding that happens and the kind of opening for performers that happens in their willingness to express themselves in ways that they may be covered up in other spaces but felt welcome to do in that. So it's really turned into something, the words spiritual and ritualistic and all of those kinds of things just seem naturally to come out, because it is that kind of thing.
So are you of the camp that would say, it's not really about laughter or making people laugh, it's really this kind of, well, something else? Maybe I don't want to fill that blank for you, but what is it about?
So yeah, I use that phrase a lot, generosity of spirit, this idea that there are the things that we hold on to, that most of us, and I'm doing my gestures with it, right? That most of us want to keep very tight to the chest. And it's an act of letting whatever those things are, if they're trivialities of everyday life, or if they're really dark, deep-held things that we don't want to let out for some reason or another, we're too embarrassed or too ashamed, that it's this welcoming of those things, this acknowledgement that we all are living with that. And if someone among us can be brave enough to be generous of spirit, to open in the ways that might be embarrassing, that might be a failure, that might be ridiculous, that there is something that I think often leads to laughter. I think often that there's something about it that's so authentic that it's quite funny, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's really touching. We can be laughing in a moment and crying in the next. And I think that all of those things are essential for me in what happens when we're in, I guess in this instance, in the study of clown, and that for me is the good stuff.
It's interesting, isn't it, that there's something you can study in that way that really has so much to do with one's own relationship to oneself. That's not just about a craft or a technique, but it's really about confronting or becoming comfortable with aspects of oneself. So it's like a self-learning developmental journey, but it's also like a discipline and a practice. There's not many things in the world that are quite like that.
Yeah, I think clown is confronting because at once there's an incredible history and lineage, and at the same time, it's about being irreverent and somehow disrespectful of those lineages and breaking the conventions. And so, I mean, honestly, not to go back and to talk about the book, but the reason for the book initially was I didn't want anyone to have a feeling that there was a right way. And I thought that there was it can be too much as a student to go in and not feel present with a certain philosophy. Oh, that doesn't seem right for me. And I wanted to make sure that students felt like there are as many ways in as there are people in this room.
Beautiful.
And that, you know, what works, what's a way in for me may not be for you. And if I can get a lot of other people to talk about their ways in, maybe one of them sparks for you, because I don't want students to be limited to emulating their teacher. I think a lot of the time we do that thing where we just think, oh, that's the right way to do this. Let me try to be more like them. So it's like, how do I kind of defray that inspiration and make it be more like whoever inspires you, and however that gets you into who you are.
And who were you inspired by? Like, out of all those conversations, which ones connected with your personal clown spirit or way of doing it?
It's a good question. I mean, okay, so I'm gonna give a different answer. My work as a clown is heavily inspired by Buster Keaton.
Oh, interesting.
And if you go back into those, sadly not in the book, not alive at the time. I don't know. I don't remember when he passed, but nor that he would have necessarily spoken to me. But of all the clowns, you know, I mean, one of the things from talking to so many people was understanding the huge influence of Charlie Chaplin. That no one was untouched by watching him, and Buster Keaton, I think, for many people as well. But for me, I love Chaplin. But for me, Keaton, when I was young, was watching him was so exciting, and it hit something in me. Maybe I felt I'm a bit of an athletic build. I'm not too tall or anything, but I'm scrappy and I can do the acrobatics, and I've got a lot of that kind of persona, that kind of character, and the way it was playful, the deadpan humor, the stone face, all of it was so thrilling to me. I just wanted to be him. And so that was huge in terms of what I took. And then from there, the other clowns that I got really excited about, often it was because there was some connection to Keaton. And I mean, it still now, I mean, is my absolute favorite. I can't get enough of watching him.
Me too. I love it. And Chaplin, you know. But it's interesting because I guess, you know, this is something that came up in my conversation with Ira Seidenstein a lot, who's very critical in a way, I think in a good, healthy way, of the kind of schools of clowning, these kind of established schools, you know. And Charlie Chaplin, I don't know about Buster Keaton, but Chaplin said on a number of occasions that he was very against the idea of the acting school, or of acting or clowning being taught in this sort of institutionalized way. And yet, you know, here we are today in this sort of climate of, you know, like the workshop, the culture of the workshop and movement and such being taught in universities in a way that, you know, was unheard of for Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin. The way that they learned was completely different. So what do you think about that kind of pedagogy of the Buster Keaton era versus what we have now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's for kind of what I said before, that I think that being too faithful to any methodology is dangerous. I mean, I think taking anything, anyone, including ourselves, too seriously is dangerous. And so in that regard, I don't subscribe to gurus. I don't subscribe to notions of a path, a method. I think that everyone has something to teach us, and we should be sparked and inspired by the things that compel us, and where other places, other things excite us or move us, also those things, because ultimately we have to be more ourselves, not more a thing.
Yeah.
And so in that way, I think I really agree that I don't have an interest in being this kind of clown or performer or teacher even. I don't say, I teach this method of clown.
Yeah. No, I get that. Beautiful. But you do have, so you have a pretty developed kind of repertoire of work at this point that you've created. So, and I've never seen any of the work live, so it's hard for me to kind of comment too much, but I've seen the sort of aesthetic of it. There's a lot of physicality, there's a lot of partner or group acro, that it seems to me like there's kind of a lot of character and storytelling going on within that context. It was hard to see, like there wasn't overt clowning, but I'm sure that clowning works its way in. So talk us through a little bit about what is your aesthetic? What kind of shows do you create? What do they look like? And what are your inspirations?
Yeah, I think that each show asks to have a different environment, a different world. And so it changes. Clown is incredibly present in all of them. And for me, the aesthetic that compels me is something that's maybe, again, it's not surprising, that's not as overt. It's uncommon that I put on a nose. I do sometimes. There's maybe 2 pieces that I've done in a red nose. But the rest of the time, it's more just dissolved inside the aesthetic of a world. And so I don't know that there's a specific thing. I can say that I've typically lived in a space where I like to create a world that has a sense that the rules of reality aren't quite what we're used to. And so usually using acrobatics as a way of creating physicality that starts to feel like the laws of physics don't quite apply. So we step outside in that way. A recent show that we made, the last show was called 3, which was inspired by No Exit, the Sartre play. And I've found that I'm inspired a lot by the French. I guess it's not terribly surprising, the history of circus and clown and the poetry of it. I think that the work I do seeks to be poetic in this way, and there's just such a rich history of genius in the French clown and circus world, and theater as well, I guess, with Sartre. But so that show, there you go, you've got us there. So that show, which is made with this trio, with Cynthia Price and Taylor Casas, are the 2 women I'm there with, is about 3 people in hell, discovering that they're in hell together and that they're each other's torturers, as epitomized by that image. But was actually the first 5 minutes of the show are a clown routine. Right. A clown routine done without any concept of it being a clown routine, because it's about missing each other. The attempt to find each other and the inability to do so. And so it's really fun because sometimes there's laughter in it, and sometimes it's nervous because we don't let on that it's a clown gag. And so playing with that in the show is really kind of playful in a surprising way for us, because we're used to doing it in a really, more of a slapstick kind of a way. And then in this world, letting it be a little nefarious and then allowing us to find our way into character through these ideas that are for me completely from my history and my sort of experience as a clown. And so it feels, for people who know, but the rest of them, you let them feel this like weird, eerie sense of we're searching for each other, but somehow we're just not able to get there no matter how hard we try. And you think about clown and like the missing spot and how every time we look for it, it goes further away. I mean, they're everywhere. You know, you can find gag and gag and gag, but so yeah, in that instance, it's a little bit more mysterious. We wanted to make something dark. Our other shows have been quite comical, so it was fun in that way. In previous work, like our show Flight, which is an adaptation of The Little Prince. Again, the French are seemingly always somewhere. Yeah. And that one, you know, is much more overtly clown. I mean, in terms of the characters we create on the you know, the characters that the Little Prince meets as he travels the planets. In our adaptation, they're islands. And yeah, it's totally clowned up and really fun to find the ridiculousness of these characters and invent them and find how they connect through us. And that's always, yeah, you can, they're all the handy images. You can see it's much brighter. But again, with an element of magic to it, with an element of how do we become something so that Fingers become a character, or all three of us become a character, and so that it's a world that's the magic of the body.
Yeah.
So beautiful. That's, I think if you could say there's something about my work, it's about this idea of the magic of the human body in collaboration with other bodies. So yeah, like this, making the airplane, beginning and end image of the show was, you know, it's just awesome seeing kids or adults just like, wow, how are you flying this plane? And then it crashes and bodies are just doing these things. And so trying to make the circus invisible and let it just become a sense of, this isn't possible. How can this be real?
It's beautiful. Just hearing you describe your own work. I love that. I love hearing artists describe their own work and what inspires them. So great. And really bringing those photographs to life, you know. There's some beautiful video montages you've got on the website as well that I encourage people to go have a look at. Yeah,
check it out, bossyflyer.com.
Yeah, and come and see your work. Where do you tour a lot? I mean, are you likely to be in people's vicinity?
It's a big question at the moment. I mean, we were touring all the time until COVID, until we got stopped touring. We had a lot of dates on, and of course, everything was off. And things are a little bit more spontaneous now. We did do two dates or 2 locations last year, but one of the trio of them is currently moved to Brooklyn, and the others of us have been, you know, doing our different projects. And so I don't know when we'll do those shows. Right now I've been doing a lot more cultivation of community in Los Angeles. And I think all of this time during this sort of big break from connection made me want to stay local more. And so I've been doing less international touring than I was. I was really on the road a lot. And now I'm doing some performance, a bit more workshops and other community kind of organizing around dance and clown and circus.
Do you work with David Rydell in any capacity, or you guys are friends, I know, but
we're friends a little bit. I mean, he runs the clown school here, and so he's quite busy with that. Once in a while we collaborate on something. More than that, I think we just send people to each other. I was just getting someone in his class that starts on Sunday in 2 days. I can't wait to hear about it. And so I mean, I think it's a pretty, as big as LA is, it's a pretty intimate community. We all know each other quite well here.
Yeah. Well, I spoke to John Gilkey recently, and also to Amrita Dhaliwal. So I'm kind of doing the LA slowly getting through the LA crowd.
Yeah. Have you spoken to David?
No, but I definitely want to.
Yeah, absolutely. I had thought to myself, oh, I wonder, I didn't know if you'd done any of these with two people, or if it's better if you sort of stick to just the one, because I saw you did with Anna Delirium, and I thought, oh, you could have had them both on. I didn't know if you had a decision of wanting to just have one of them, but then you can have David on, and I can watch and see what he says about me.
Absolutely. Well, I hope that we can potentially get you up here to Oregon, because there's a kind of a nascent clown festival called the Coho Clown Festival in Portland.
Oh, lovely.
Which had its first iteration this last year. And we had some lovely shows, most of them local, but we had a few people visiting us. So you'd fit in very well with that. But also maybe a workshop, one of these days, maybe a movement workshop or a clown workshop.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we spoke before. I think it wasn't during the interview part, but before I came on, that I grew up just down the road a little ways from where you are now. And so, yeah, Oregon, and it's funny. I mean, I feel compelled to sort of go back in. There's one of the interviews, and I think you spoke to her on there, Angela DeCastro.
Yeah.
Who really talks about clown in this incredibly spiritual way that is experiencing, sometimes meeting a clown in the woods who will never be shown to anyone, that it's just a clown that wants to be secret in the woods. And I think that growing up in Oregon, so much in the wilderness, in the forest, was this kind of, it's so green and wet. It's this like mystical, experience with the nymphs and the gnomes that must be, wandering about in terms of, how we think about hobbits and all of these, kind of narratives that we grow up with, that it really felt like it set me up to view all of the clown universe as something, as something that like kind of magically appears from behind the trees. And I think it's amazing to think of doing clown up there in the Columbia River Gorge, and just like that whole area feels like it wants that playfulness.
We have a question from Mike here, which is interesting to me as well. Can you tell us about your conversation with Popov?
Oh, sure. The conversation, with Oleg Popov, it was really difficult in that he was really unwell. Unfortunately, he was very, very kind. Unfortunately, he was a bit in and out of the hospital at the time, and it was difficult to get a lot of time to chat with him. We were really grateful that we got that conversation in the book. I think it was really special to have. It's a bit brief because his time was pretty limited. Mostly we were speaking with his wife, who was so kind to us to arrange that and make it important enough that it happened. I think a lot of people just wouldn't have prioritized, spending time to do that. And so that was, I think that's sort of the big memory of that, was just that it was a really gracious thing. I don't remember the dates. He passed not very long after. I'm
just looking that up, actually. 2016.
Yeah, just a year after the book came out, he passed. And so not to be morose, but I had graduate students who were thinking that there was some kind of a devious double plot where there was a hit going out on everyone in the book.
Well, it's only him and Dimitri have passed, right, since then?
Well, we've done very well since then, but in the year after, it wasn't looking good.
Oh.
It happened. I don't remember again, Dimitri, but I think that they were both within about 6 months or a year of the publishing of the book. They both passed, and so I was sad and grateful for it, and it looked like a lot at the time. But I think since then we've been for everybody. So
I think so. I'm looking at the list.
Yeah, the other one, that was quite amazing, related to that was talking to Django. He he's been through so many things. You know, he just did his Nouveau Clown Festival and has been, you know, talking about that he has terminal illness now and is I don't know how much longer he has, but is just being really public about it and being really present that he wants to be playing, he wants to be welcoming, you know, people to perform and be ridiculous, and that, you know, even when we spoke some years ago, he'd been through a lot and had some close calls, and I think was just really grateful that he was alive and had made it through. I mean, and talking with him, my goodness, the life that he's lived, it was like, it's a miracle that you made it anywhere near this far. A kind of madness that few of us would even dare to touch, just in how he's lived his life. But it was pretty remarkable to be there, and then because he is very active on Facebook, to see his conversations. I mean, he's been on the news and posting things and posting directly his thoughts in the last few months. I don't know exactly what's going on with him now, but it's quite beautiful to see someone who has such a big clown heart to be going through this process. And yeah, I mean, Leela, who we're talking about, who's much younger, but who's just been fighting cancer recently and sharing all of that process. It's a crazy thing. I mean, it feels somehow really relevant that the kind of playfulness that and mirth and good-heartedness that we talk about and that we are so deeply connected to and wanting to be as much of our lives as possible is, you know, it tests us in those really difficult moments. And so there's something about being present with Leela, even just a little bit, chatting with her here and then during that time. It's kind of beautiful to see that she's so brave to be able to, you know, with her bald head, to wear a silly hat and be like, here I am, you know, for this thing, and still connecting and that someone doesn't forget, because it seems so easy that you would just lose any of that spirit and just be really down and sad in these parts of our lives. So I think it's been somehow somehow maybe inspiring for the future, for the difficult things that I go through, or any of us go through, to see these clowns who are, like, you know, die hard, I guess, you know, never quit.
Yeah, it is quite amazing. I sort of like Django is really the rock and roll star of the clown world, isn't he?
Oh, totally.
How he's lived and who he is, and it's going to be it's an interesting moment. Well, Ezra, it's just been really, really nice to connect with you, and I wonder if, before we go, there's anything that I don't know, anything we haven't talked about that you think you would just like to share with folks, share with this community?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, let's see. It's I guess first just say thanks for reaching out. I'm really delighted to be thought of. I'm certainly more used to being the you in the conversation that we're having than the me in the conversation that we're having. I have a propensity to want to go back. Well, I could talk about other people. It feels somehow good. Yeah, I mean, I suppose from this sort of, you know, clown space, the thing that's been really, I guess, really sweet to think about lately is, going back to your conversation, I'm thinking about Slava talking about this, but this space of taking clown even outside of the formality of the clown spaces, and taking clown into all the different situations that we find ourselves in. And I've been enjoying a lot this question of where is the spirit of clown alive in the coffee shop, not even having to think of someone or think of myself as a performer, or of having some kind of look or some kind of affect or behavior, but just just looking for this heart of the fool in all these different places, and letting the barriers and boundaries fall away, which I think also challenges a bit of our ideas that, oh, this is something I do in a show, or oh, this is something that I've learned about in a workshop, but that I think really the spirit of it is everywhere. And in the world that we're in, I think there's really nothing more important than the kind of meaning that happens inside of this kind of chaotic and sometimes despairing, kind of big picture things we can get lost in. And it really feels like there is something of the clown that wants to be alive in all the places, and especially in the US, where there's, we get a bad rap. There's a lot of kind of misconception, but I think when we let some of the formality of it go a little bit, then you get to the place where everyone really longs for this kind of spirit. It's so essential to our joyfulness and to our perseverance to get through some of the difficult, global, personal, whatever stuff that seems like they just won't stop at a level that it feels so sweet to have this like in the back pocket and keep it present in these things. So I guess if it's maybe that's a conversation that I'm excited about having, and since we're chatting and maybe other people are listening or thinking, that I really enjoy and enjoy hearing how other people are having those conversations, and what happens when we think about how that goes. I say Slava because I think he's transferred completely to just, what is it to live a life as a fool, and where do we go when it's not about the show anymore, it's about everything. And so that was definitely like, oh, okay, once you've conquered the world of performance, you move on and you try to conquer the world of just bringing some kind of joy or some kind of laughter into everywhere.
And some people are really good the other way around. They bring all that into their everyday lives, but they find the idea of performing to be intimidating, which is interesting.
Well, and that I'm really into this notion now that you don't have to do it a certain way. If you don't like getting up on stage in front of everybody else, don't.
Yeah.
Do it, be playful with your friend in an unexpected moment. Share something tender about yourself with your family when it might be difficult and you might feel like you're the ass, but like do it anyway.
Beautiful.
That it always has a place, and that we should do it where it feels intuitive, where it feels like we want to be giving, because this is a big, in the world of consent culture recently, because a lot of clown stuff can be really coercive, and historically a lot of the way we perform and teach it's questionable in terms of consent. And so it has welcomed me into a place of observing that when a clown feels, or when a performer as a clown feels coerced somehow into an act, it's not clown anymore. And I see it really clearly now. I don't think I fully understood that before, because sometimes it was still funny, but it wasn't really clown. And that the clown has to want to play the game. If the clown doesn't want to play the game, it's not clown anymore. And so that feels like just a big graciousness, a big welcoming that we can all enter into this universe, into this spirit any way we want, and that maybe that like gives us license to not feel stressed or pressured that we're not performing in the way we think we ought to. But if you don't feel excited about playing the game on this stage or in this workshop or in this kind of public space, then give yourself grace and play the game when it feels right for you.
I love this idea of clown consent, clown scent. I think we should have a conference or something, like a gathering, like a bigger conversation around that issue, because I think it's kind of you know, bring it's a thread that's woven through a lot of my recent conversations with people. So it's super interesting to be talking about that.
Yeah, I'm not surprised to hear it. I mean, I think it's present with us everywhere, but certainly it's become really front and center and super confronting, right? There was a moment where it was like, can we not do this anymore? Like, is this too edgy? Because
patriarchal in some ways.
Yeah,
you know?
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it feels, thankfully, that the answer is, of course, we can still do this, and we have to still do this, and we can learn how to do this in a way that honors consent differently, that is less patriarchal, less hierarchical, and kind of, you know, from the top down in some odd way. That it's also the bottom up, but that there is more graciousness in it. That there is space for people to come as they are or where they're ready, and not with necessarily the, you know, guns blazing all the way that we've enjoyed at some level, but also that has brought a lot of difficulty underneath that and alongside it, which it's I'm down. I want to go. When's the conference?
Yeah. Okay, well, on that note, I think this is a great place to wrap up. And Ezra, thank you so much again. It's been a really delight talking to you, and I hope that you'll stay in touch and come back on someday.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for having me, and yeah, thank you for doing this work. It's really exciting to you know, get to participate and contribute and just to enjoy all that you're doing with these Clownversations.
Yeah, thank you. Well, stick around and we'll have a little chat after I've said goodbye to everyone. But goodbye for now. Bye, Ezra. Bye. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in again for another amazing Clownversation. Very cool. Really enjoyed talking to Ezra. And just want to remind you all that there is an opportunity now, if you want to support the Clownversations, to do so, to be part of this club, part of this family. Patreon.com/clownspirit, and you can make a contribution. This is about sharing the Clownversations generally, right? To make it available, to make sure that we're really bringing clowning to everybody at every level. So if you want to be part of that and you want to contribute something to keeping the Clownversations going, that is your opportunity. I also want to remind you about Olivier Hugues-Thero's Clown X Masterclass, The Empathetic Point of No Return, on Saturday, May 6th. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us for another Clownversation. Next week, I'm going to be with Sky DeSella, who is an amazing clown who trained with John Gilkey, in fact, originally at the Pickle Family Circus many years ago, and then moved to France. And she's been living in France for 30 years, doing amazing things in the clown world in France. So tune in next week for Sky DeSella. Until then, keep clowning.